The ship's metal exterior groaned as it cooled in the scorching alien air. Inside, three figures huddled around a flickering holographic display, their translucent blue skin pulsing with bioluminescent patterns of distress. The Ctharians were far from home. Atmosphere analysis complete, announced Kalen, the senior geologist and head of the small family unit. His large, sensitive eyes blinked rapidly, struggling to adjust to the harsh sunlight filtering through the damaged hull. Oxygen levels excessive, humidity critically low, solar radiation intense. His voice carried the clinical detachment of a scientist, but his skin flickered with patterns that his wife and son recognized as profound anxiety. "Can we survive out there?" asked Lyra, the marine biologist. Her slender form moved slowly under Earth's crushing gravity, each step deliberate and taxing. On Cthar, their oceanic homeworld of perpetual twilight and crushing pressure, they would have glided with effortless grace through dense water. Here they felt heavy, vulnerable, exposed. Their son, Xyler, pressed against the viewport, fascinated despite their predicament. At the equivalent of 10 Earth years, his natural curiosity battled with the instinctive fear programmed into their species' genetics. "Everything is so bright," he whispered, his skin dimming protectively as he squinted at the harsh landscape outside. And still, nothing moves like on Cthar. The emergency landing had been violent and disorienting. Their research vessel, designed for the study of asteroid belts rather than planetary visits, had encountered a devastating electromagnetic surge near Earth's orbit. Systems failing, life support faltering, they had no choice but to attempt landfall on the primitive world their scans had detected below. Now they were stranded in what their database classified as a remote region of Australia, a vast, arid expanse far from the planet's dominant species population centers. Their ship, half buried in red soil, would never fly again without extensive repairs. The emergency beacon was transmitting, but in this isolated part of the galaxy, rescue could take months, perhaps years. "We must conserve power," decided Kalen, shutting down non-essential systems. The life support can maintain breathable humidity and pressure in the main cabin for 37 days at current efficiency. Lyra helped him activate their protective suits, thin, flexible membranes that would shield their sensitive skin from dehydration while regulating temperature and filtering the overwhelming sensory input of Earth. "The scanner shows basic life forms within a 10-kilometer radius," she reported. "Primitive carbon-based organisms. Some potentially dangerous." Xyler's skin pulsed with patterns of excitement mixed with apprehension. On Cthar, danger came from subtle changes in ocean chemistry or the slow predatory advance of colonial organisms. Here, everything was alien. The piercing light, the unrelenting heat, the oppressive heaviness of each movement. As the family prepared for their first tentative exploration of the immediate area surrounding their ship, they remained unaware that they were already being observed. Alara Matthews had been tracking the strange lights in the sky since dawn. As the region's wildlife researcher and caretaker of a private conservation area spanning thousands of acres, she knew every ridge, every waterhole, every animal track in her territory. The falling object at sunrise was unlike anything she had ever witnessed. Approaching cautiously on her electric terrain vehicle, Alara cut the motor 2 kilometers from the impact site and continued on foot. 20 years of fieldwork had taught her the value of silence and patience. Her water flask hung heavily from her belt, alongside a worn leather pouch containing field tools, a satellite phone, and a medical kit. Her wide-brimmed hat shielded sharp hazel eyes that missed little. From the shelter of a rocky outcropping, Alara observed the strange vessel and, more astonishingly, its occupants. Her scientific mind raced to comprehend what she was seeing. Not human, certainly. Their movements too fluid despite being clearly hampered by something, their skin unlike anything she had ever encountered, shimmering with patterns of light that seemed to change with purpose. "Extraterrestrial visitors," she breathed to herself, the words sounding absurd even as undeniable evidence stood before her. Rather than fear, She felt a deep professional curiosity and concern. Whatever these beings were, they appeared distressed and vulnerable in the harsh environment. Alara watched as the tallest of the three aliens ventured a few hesitant steps from their ship, some kind of scanning device in hand. She noticed how they recoiled from direct sunlight, how their movements seemed labored, how the smallest one stayed close to the middle figure in a manner that reminded her of a child seeking protection. She had spent her life reading the body language of creatures that couldn't speak her language. These visitors, despite their alien nature, displayed recognizable behavioral patterns. They were scared, disoriented, and completely unprepared for the Australian outback. Making her decision, Alara stepped out from her hiding place and began a slow, non-threatening approach. She kept her hands visible and her posture relaxed, using the same careful body language she would employ when approaching a skittish wallaby or an injured eagle. The reaction was immediate. The aliens retreated toward their ship in obvious alarm. The tallest one activated something that shimmered in the air between them, some kind of protective barrier. The smallest one ducked behind the middle figure, whose skin flashed with brilliant patterns. Alara stopped, maintaining a respectful distance. She slowly removed her hat and placed it on the ground, then knelt beside it. A universal gesture of peace, she hoped. She smiled, pointed to herself, and said clearly, "Alara. My name is Alara." Inside their protective field, the Ctharians conferred urgently, their skin speech communicating volumes of information that their verbal language merely supplemented. The dominant species, Kalen identified, consulting his scanner. Bipedal mammals with primitive technology. The database warns they are unpredictable and potentially aggressive. It's displaying submission behaviors, noted Lyra, her biologists eye-catching the significance of the creature's posture. Not threatening immediately. "Can we communicate?" asked Xyler, his curiosity overcoming his initial fear. The translator might work for basic concepts. Kalen hesitantly activated their universal translator, a device designed for potential first contact scenarios but rarely tested outside of simulations. It analyzed the sound patterns of Alara's simple introduction and attempted to establish a rudimentary translation matrix. "Alara," he repeated carefully, the translation device converting his Ctharian speech into rough approximations of English. "We are peaceful. Our vessel damaged. I am Kalen. My family unit, Lyra and Xyler." The communication was crude, stilted, but Alara's face lit up with understanding. She pointed to herself again, then gestured around at the harsh landscape. Slowly, using simple words and many gestures, she conveyed that she lived nearby, that the environment was dangerous for them, that she offered shelter and assistance. The Ctharians' debate was tense. Trust a primitive alien species on an unfamiliar world? Their scientific protocols advised isolation and minimal contact. Yet their situation was desperate. The ship's environmental systems were failing fast in the extreme conditions. Without help, they might not survive long enough for rescue. "We accept," Kalen finally decided, the translator conveying his words. "We will follow Alara." The journey to Alara's research station was arduous for the Ctharians. Even with their protective suits, Earth's environment assaulted their senses. The direct sunlight burned their eyes. The dry air caused their skin to produce excessive protective mucus, and the gravity made each step an exhausting ordeal. Xyler stumbled frequently and used to walking on solid ground, much less navigating the rough terrain. Alara noticed his struggle and slowed her pace, occasionally offering guidance around difficult obstacles. She pointed out landmarks and named animals they glimpsed from a distance, trying to establish some connection despite the enormous gulf between their worlds. The research station appeared suddenly as they crested a rocky hill, a cluster of modern buildings partially embedded in the landscape, powered by solar arrays and surrounded by various monitoring equipment. It was modest by human standards, but to the Ctharians, it represented an oasis of potential safety in a hostile world. Inside, Alara quickly adjusted the environmental controls, dimming the lights and increasing the humidity. She showed them to a room normally used for recovering injured wildlife, cool, quiet, and adaptable. The Ctharians' relief was visible as their protective suits registered the improved conditions and loosened their constriction slightly. Rest, Elara told them, the translator conveying her meaning. Safe here. I will bring water. Left alone, the family huddled together, their skin speech conveying deep unease despite the improved environment. We must maintain constant vigilance, insisted Kalen, setting up their portable scanner to continuously monitor the surroundings. This human's assistance is convenient, but potentially dangerous. Their species has no unified government, frequent territorial disputes, and a history of violence against unknown entities according to our database. The database is incomplete, Lyra reminded him. It's based on intercepted broadcast signals and limited observational data. This individual seems different from those reports. Xyler had already begun exploring the room, his scientific curiosity momentarily overriding his fear. The technology is so strange, he observed. Mechanical rather than bioneural. Inefficient but ingenious in its simplicity. When Elara returned with containers of water, she found them examining everything with an almost childlike fascination. She demonstrated how to operate the room's climate controls, the lighting system, and the communication panel that would alert her if they needed assistance. Through a combination of gestures, simple words, and the increasingly effective translator, she explained that they were in a remote research station where she studied and protected the local ecosystem. Few humans here, she assured them. Private land, safe from curious people. Over the following days, a cautious routine developed. The Ctharians remained primarily in their adapted quarters, venturing out only briefly to observe their new environment through the station's large windows. Elara provided them with water and attempted to find substances they could safely consume, as their biochemistry rejected most Earth foods. Eventually, they discovered that certain algae cultures from Elara's laboratory contained compounds similar enough to Ctharian nutrition to sustain them temporarily. Communication improved gradually as the translation device absorbed more of Elara's language. She learned that they were scientists from a water world called Cthar, on a mission to study asteroid composition when their ship malfunctioned. They were a family unit, Kalen the geologist, Lyra the marine biologist, and their son Xyler. In turn, Elara explained her work protecting endangered species in this conservation area, continuing research begun by her grandparents decades ago. She showed them maps, pictures, and data about the ecosystem they had landed in. The cultural misunderstandings were frequent and sometimes amusing. Kalen and Lyra were particularly confused by Elara's reliance on observational knowledge rather than continuous scanning and data analysis. To them, her approach seemed dangerously primitive and subjective. You recognize animal behavior without quantitative measurement. Kalen asked incredulously when Elara explained how she could predict weather changes by watching certain birds. Not everything needs measuring to be understood, Elara replied with a smile. Some knowledge comes from experience, from being part of this place rather than just studying it. The concept was alien to the Ctharians, whose civilization relied on precise scientific measurement and technological mediation of their environment. The idea of direct, unfiltered interaction with a natural ecosystem seemed recklessly dangerous to them. Xyler, however, was fascinated. While his parents focused on repairing communications equipment and constructing a more effective shelter within Elara's station, the young Ctharian spent hours watching Elara's wildlife recordings and the actual landscape outside the windows. One morning, he witnessed something that captured his complete attention, a magnificent wedge-tailed eagle swooping down to catch a rabbit in a display of speed and precision that left him breathless. The predator's power and control were unlike anything in Cthar's slow, pressure-equalized environment. "What is that creature?" he asked Elara, his skin pulsing with excitement patterns. "A wedge-tailed eagle," she explained, pleased by his interest. "The largest bird of prey in Australia. That one is a female I call Athena." She controls the hunting territory around this eastern ridge. She kills smaller animals, Xyler observed. Is she dangerous to us? No, Ilera assured him. She's a predator, but she knows her place in the ecosystem. She only hunts what she needs, what she's evolved to catch. She's not mindlessly aggressive. She's perfectly adapted to her role. This concept fascinated Xyler. On Cthar, the dominant life forms were vast colonial organisms or slow-moving filter feeders. Predation existed, but was chemical, gradual, often imperceptible. The direct, physical hunting of Earth predators seemed simultaneously terrifying and magnificent. As the days passed, Xyler's fascination with Earth's wildlife grew, particularly with Athena the eagle. He began secretly recording her flights and hunting patterns with a small Ctharian data collector, building a behavioral profile that he studied obsessively. While his parents continued to view Earth primarily as a hostile environment to be endured until rescue, Xyler was developing a different perspective, seeing the interconnected beauty of the ecosystem rather than just its dangers. Nearly 2 weeks after their arrival, while his parents were deeply focused on enhancing their distress signal using components from Alarispare Electronics, Xyler made a fateful decision. He had mapped Athena's territory through his observations and calculated that she frequently visited a particular rocky outcropping several kilometers from the station. His data suggested she would be hunting there this morning. He needed to see the majestic predator up close, not just through windows or recordings. Slipping out while everyone was occupied, Xyler activated his protective suit and ventured outside alone. The direct exposure to Earth's environment was still overwhelming. The brightness, the heat, the gravity, but his growing curiosity outweighed his discomfort. He carried his small data recorder and a portable scanner, following the coordinates he had plotted to Athena's hunting ground. The journey took longer than he had calculated, his Ctharian physiology struggling with the terrain despite his youthful resilience. By midday, he had reached the rocky formation, a dramatic outcropping overlooking a small valley where smaller animals often grazed. Perfect hunting grounds for a predator that relied on height and speed. Xyler settled into a crevice, his suit adjusting to help him blend with the rocks, and waited. His scanner detected various small life forms nearby, but no sign yet of the large predator. The sun beat down mercilessly, his suit working overtime to maintain his body temperature and hydration. But Xyler barely noticed the discomfort. His attention focused entirely on the sky and the possibility of glimpsing Athena in her natural element. Hours passed. Xyler's scientific patience was rewarded when his scanner detected a large airborne organism approaching from the east. He looked up, his oversized eyes widening with excitement as he spotted the distinctive silhouette of the wedge-tailed eagle circling high above. What Xyler failed to notice, however, was that he wasn't the only one who had chosen this location for observation. In his fascination with the aerial predator, he had missed the signs of another hunter, a dingo that had claimed this territory as its own. The wild canine had been watching the strange alien visitor with wary curiosity for the past hour, trying to determine if this unusual creature was threat, prey, or neither. When Xyler shifted position to get a better view of the eagle, his movement finally triggered the dingo's response. A low growl emanated from behind a nearby rock formation. Xyler froze, his scanner suddenly alerting him to the mammalian predator's presence. His heart raced as he turned slowly to face this unexpected threat. The dingo, a lean, powerful animal with golden fur and intense eyes, stood barely 10 meters away, its posture tense and evaluative. Xyler's knowledge of Earth predators was focused entirely on Athena. He had no context for interpreting canine behavior. To his Ctharian understanding, the bared teeth and direct eye contact read as imminent, irrational aggression rather than territorial warning. Panicking, Xyler activated his scanner at maximum sensitivity, the device emitting a high-pitched frequency that was supposed to collect detailed biological data. To the dingo, however, the sound was painfully disorienting. The animal flinched, then growled more deeply. interpreting the strange noise as a threat display. Xyler backed away slowly, his Ctharian instincts urging him to release bioluminescent warning patterns, a defense mechanism useless inside his protective suit and meaningless to Earth predators. His retreat brought him to the edge of the outcropping, with a dangerous drop behind him and the increasingly agitated dingo in front. The standoff escalated when Xyler stumbled on loose gravel. The sudden movement triggered the dingo's predatory instinct, and it lunged forward. Xyler lost his balance completely, falling onto his back. In an instant, the dingo was upon him, powerful jaws closing around his arm, not with killing force, but with the testing grip predators use to assess potential prey. Xyler's terrified scream emerged as a high-frequency sound that further agitated the dingo. The animal repositioned its grip, teeth pressing against the protective suit, which alerted him with damage warnings. Though the suit had prevented immediate injury, its integrity was failing. Soon, the dingo's teeth would penetrate to his vulnerable skin. Back at the research station, Alara was the first to notice Xyler's absence during her midday check on the Ctharians. Kaelin and Lyra emerged from their work in alarm when she inquired about their son's whereabouts. He was documenting data in his quarters, Lyra insisted, her skin flashing with distress patterns as she realized he was nowhere in the living space. A quick search of the station confirmed their fears. Xyler was gone, and so was his portable scanner and data recorder. Kaelin activated the family's communication link, but Xyler had either disabled it or was somewhere the signal couldn't penetrate. He has been obsessively studying one of the flying predators, Lyra remembered suddenly. He collected coordinates, behavioral data. Alara's face paled. The wedge-tailed eagle? If he went looking for Athena, he might have gone to Sentinel Ridge. It's her primary hunting ground, but it's also within the territory of a dingo pack. Seeing the Ctharian's confusion, she quickly explained. Dingoes are canine predators, hunters with sharp teeth and strong jaws. Not usually aggressive toward humans, but something as unfamiliar as Xyler. They might see him as a threat or potential prey. Kaelin's skin darkened with alarm. Our protective suits can withstand minor impacts, but not concentrated pressure like teeth. If attacked, we need to find him now, Alara said firmly, already gathering her emergency pack. I know these animals and this terrain. We have maybe 2 hours of daylight left. As they hurried to Alara's terrain vehicle, Kaelin retrieved a small device from their salvaged equipment. A defense module, he explained. It creates an energy pulse that could repel an Earth predator without permanent harm. Alara frowned, but didn't argue. There would be time for ethical discussions about wildlife management later, if they found Xyler in time. The journey to Sentinel Ridge was tense and mostly silent. Lyra's skin pulsed with parent fear patterns that needed no translation, while Kaelin continuously scanned for any trace of their son's biological signature. Alara drove with focused intensity, her mind calculating the fastest route while cataloging all the potential scenarios they might encounter. They were still a kilometer from the ridge when they heard it, a high-pitched, alien scream that cut through the afternoon air. Kaelin and Lyra recognized it immediately as their son's distress call. There! Alara pointed to the rocky outcropping ahead. She stopped the vehicle, knowing the sound would only further agitate any predator. We continue on foot. Quietly, Kaelin raised the defense module, but Alara placed a restraining hand on his arm. Not yet. We don't know the situation. That device could make things worse if the predator is already agitated. They approached the ridge cautiously, climbing the rough terrain as quickly as the Ctharian's physiology allowed. As they crested the final rise, the scene before them froze them in place. Xyler lay on his back on the rocky ground, his protective suit visibly damaged. Standing over him, its jaws firmly closed around the young Ctharian S-arm, was a large male dingo with golden-red fur. The predator was not shaking or tearing at its prey. Instead, it seemed to be testing, evaluating this strange creature it had captured. Kaelin raised the defense module, his finger hovering over the activation control, but Alara again stopped him with a firm hand on his wrist. "Don't move," she whispered. Any sudden energy discharge will trigger a kill response. He's curious now, not committed to an attack yet. That is my child. Lyra's skin flashed with desperate patterns, though she kept her voice low as instructed. Trust me, Ilara pleaded. I've lived among these animals for 20 years. I know this dingo. It's the alpha male of the Eastern Pack. I call him Rusty. Before the Ctherians could protest further, Ilara stepped forward into the clearing. Her movements were slow, deliberate, non-threatening. She kept her eyes slightly averted from direct contact with the dingo, but maintained awareness of its every muscle twitch. Hey, Rusty, she said softly, her voice calm and familiar. Remember me? It's Ilara. The dingo's ears twitched at her voice, but it maintained its hold on Xyler, who remained frozen in terror, his alien eyes wide with fear. Ilara continued her careful approach, speaking in the same gentle, even tone. That's not your usual prey, is it? Not something you recognize. Not something you really want. She reached slowly into her pocket and withdrew a small object, a clicking device she used in her wildlife studies. She pressed it twice, creating a distinctive sound that the dingo clearly recognized. The animal's ears perked up fully now, its attention divided between its strange captive and the familiar human. That's right, Ilara continued, taking another careful step forward. You know this sound. It means I have something better for you than this strange thing. With exquisite slowness, she reached into her pack and removed a small package wrapped in wax paper. The scent that emerged as she carefully unwrapped it caused the dingo's nostrils to flare. Dried kangaroo meat, a treat Ilara occasionally used in her field research. She placed a small piece on the ground before her, then took a step back, creating space. This makes more sense to you, doesn't it? Something you understand. Something safe. The dingo's jaws loosened slightly on Xyler's arm, its attention now fixed on the familiar food and the human it had encountered many times in its territory. Without conflict, Ilara didn't rush, didn't force the moment. She simply stood, patient and non-threatening, a known quantity in the dingo's world. After what seemed an eternity to the watching Ctherians, the dingo finally released Xyler's arm completely. It kept its eyes on the alien creature, but backed up several steps, creating distance. Then, with a final evaluative look at both Xyler and Ilara, it trotted forward, quickly snatched the offered meat, and retreated to a nearby rock where it could observe them while eating its prize. Xyler, Ilara called softly. Very slowly, get up and walk toward me. Don't run. Don't make sudden movements. The young Ctherian complied, his movements shaky with fear and the physical strain of Earth's gravity. When he reached Ilara, she gently guided him back toward his parents without turning her back on the dingo. Only when they had all retreated several dozen meters did she finally relax her vigilant posture. Kaelin and Lyra surrounded their son, checking his protective suit for breaches, their skin displaying complex patterns of relief, anger, and lingering fear. The suit had been damaged, but not penetrated. Xyler was physically unhurt, though clearly traumatized by the encounter. How did you do that? Kaelin finally asked Ilara, his scientific mind struggling to comprehend what he had witnessed. The predator had him. It should have. Our data indicates carnivores don't voluntarily release prey. Ilara guided them all back toward the vehicle before answering. Rusty isn't just a predator. He's an individual with experiences, preferences, and decision-making capacity. He knows me. I've never threatened him or his pack. I've occasionally provided food when hunting was poor during droughts. We have a relationship, not friendship exactly, but mutual recognition and respect. You controlled him, Lyra stated, still processing the event. Ilara shook her head firmly. No, I didn't control anything. I communicated with him. I gave him an option that made more sense to him than attacking an unknown creature that might be dangerous or inedible. I respected his intelligence enough to let him make that choice. The Ctherians fell silent as they returned to the vehicle. Their entire understanding of predator-prey dynamics, of ecosystem interactions, had been challenged by what they'd witnessed. Their science, based on data and observation from a safe distance, had no framework for the kind of interconnected relationship Ilara had demonstrated. That evening, After Xyler had been settled into his quarters with his protective suit repaired and enhanced, the adults gathered in Alera's small kitchen. The young Therian had been uncharacteristically quiet since the incident, responding only minimally to his parents' questions and concerns. "He needs rest," Alera assured them, preparing tea for herself and a nutrient solution for the Therians. The physical and emotional stress of what happened would be exhausting for anyone, especially someone not adapted to this environment. "Our son could have died," Lyra stated, her skin still showing residual distress patterns. "Our data about Earth classified it as dangerous, but we didn't fully comprehend the nature of the danger. Or the nature of its balance," Kaelin added thoughtfully. "Our assessments labeled Earth's ecosystem as chaotic, primitive, dominated by competition and predation. Yet what we witnessed today suggests something more complex." Alera nodded, settling at the table with them. "Earth's ecosystems are old and intricate. Predators like Rusty aren't mindless killing machines. They're essential components of a balanced system. They make decisions, have relationships, understand their place. The true danger comes not from the natural system itself, but from failing to understand how to exist within it." The conversation continued late into the night, the Ctherians asking questions that increasingly moved beyond scientific curiosity into philosophical territory. They compared Earth's explosive biological diversity with Cthares' more stable, homogeneous ecosystem. They discussed different evolutionary paths, different ways of perceiving and interacting with environment. For the first time since their arrival, Kaelin and Lyra began to see Alera not as a helpful but primitive native, but as someone with profound knowledge their own science had never valued or pursued, the wisdom of participation rather than abstracted observation. The following morning brought a surprise. Xyler emerged from his quarters early. His demeanor changed. The traumatic encounter, rather than instilling lasting fear, seemed to have catalyzed a transformation in the young Ctherian. "I want to learn," he announced to Alera as she prepared breakfast. "Not just collect data. Learn how you understand this world, how you knew what to do yesterday." Alera studied him carefully, seeing the genuine shift in his perspective. "It takes time," she warned. "Years of observation, of being present, of making mistakes sometimes." "I've been arrogant," Xyler admitted, his skin patterns showing humility patterns his parents had rarely seen. "I thought observation through scanners was knowledge. I didn't understand." Over the next weeks, as they continued to wait for a response to their distress signal, a new routine developed. Xyler became Alera's shadow, learning to observe wildlife without technology, to recognize behavioral patterns through direct experience rather than data analysis. Under careful supervision, they ventured further into the conservation area, Alera teaching him to move quietly, to read tracks, to recognize the subtle signs of the ecosystem's rhythms. Kaelin and Lyra, too, began to engage more directly with their temporary home. Kaelin's geological expertise found practical application in helping Alera analyze soil samples for her conservation work. Lyra discovered fascinating parallels between Cthares' aquatic ecosystems and Earth's complex water management cycles in arid environments. The Ctherians still used their technology, still maintained their protective suits, but increasingly these tools supplemented rather than replaced direct experience. They began to find a balance between their scientific approach and Alera's experiential wisdom. 42 days after their crash landing, the Ctherians' enhanced communications array finally detected a response to their distress signal. A rescue vessel from their home system would reach them within the week. The news brought mixed emotions to all. "We've made significant repairs to our data systems," Kaelin told Alera as they stood watching a spectacular sunset from the research station's observation deck. "We can transfer ecological survey information that might be useful for your conservation work. Atmospheric analysis, geological composition studies, things your technology might not easily access. And I've been documenting the microbial adaptations in the dry riverbed," added Lyra. "The mechanisms they use to survive dormancy periods might have applications for your water conservation efforts." Alera smiled, touched by their offers. "Thank you. That would be incredibly helpful." She paused, looking at them thoughtfully. What will you tell your people about Earth? About your time here? The Ctherians exchanged a look, their skin displaying complex patterns of contemplation. The truth, Kalen said finally, that our initial assessment was incomplete, that we classified this world as primitive and chaotic because we measured only what our instruments could detect and valued only what resembled our own approach to knowledge. Our scientific community needs to reconsider many assumptions, Lyra added. The relationship between observer and environment, the limitations of our methodology, your approach to living within an ecosystem rather than merely studying it. It's a perspective we lack. On their final evening before departure, Alara took them to a special location, a high cliff overlooking the vast expanse of the conservation area, illuminated by a full moon. As they watched in wonder, a family of dingoes appeared on a distant ridge, their howls carrying clearly through the night air. Among them, unmistakable even at a distance, was Rusty. They're not saying goodbye, Alara said softly. They don't know you're leaving. They're just being what they are, part of this place, voices in a conversation that's been going on for thousands of years. Xyler, standing between his parents, watched the dingoes with new eyes, not as test subjects or dangers, but as fellow beings occupying their rightful place. His encounter with Rusty, terrifying as it had been, had opened a door to a different way of understanding. We are part of that conversation too, aren't we? He asked. Even though we're just visitors. Just by being here, we became part of the story of this place. Alara nodded, pleased by how much he had grown in understanding. That's exactly right. Every world is a conversation between all its inhabitants. The trouble comes when we forget to listen, when we think our voice is the only one that matters. The rescue ship arrived at dawn, settling gracefully beside the damaged research vessel. The Ctherian crew were clearly surprised by the comfortable rapport between the stranded family and the Earth native, having expected to find their compatriots barely surviving in hostile conditions. As they prepared to board, Xyler approached Alara with a small device in his hands. I made this for you, he said, presenting it carefully. It's a modified scanner calibrated to the specific biological signatures of the key species in your conservation area. It can track migration patterns, health indicators, population changes, but it's designed to supplement observation, not replace it. Alara accepted the gift with genuine appreciation. Thank you, Xyler. I'll use it well. She knelt to his level, looking directly into his large Ctherian eyes. Remember what you learned here. Sometimes the predator isn't the enemy, and sometimes the alien isn't a threat. The universe is full of conversations we're only beginning to understand. The Ctherians' departure was quick and efficient, their advanced ship lifting silently into the morning sky until it was just a glint in the atmosphere, then gone. Alara stood watching long after they'd disappeared, a bittersweet smile on her face. Later that day, as the afternoon heat began to wane, she hiked to Sentinel Ridge with Xyler's scanner device. Activating it, she was delighted to find it worked exactly as promised, providing detailed information about the wildlife in the area while remaining unobtrusive. A shadow passed overhead, and Alara looked up to see Athena, the wedge-tailed eagle, circling majestically. Further along the ridge, partially hidden in the shade of a boulder, Rusty the dingo watched her with his intelligent, evaluative gaze. Predators and aliens, humans and technology, all pieces in the complex puzzle of existence. As Alara settled on a sun-warmed rock to observe the landscape she had dedicated her life to protecting, she wondered where the Ctherian family was now and what new understanding they might bring to their distant home among the stars. Perhaps someday they would return, not as stranded survivors, but as welcome visitors. The universe, like Earth's ancient ecosystems, was full of connections waiting to be understood, conversations between worlds that were only just beginning. 3 years passed. The research station expanded as Alara received additional funding based on her groundbreaking studies of predator behavior patterns. Though she never publicly revealed the source of some of her insights, her work on interspecies communication and ecosystem balance gained recognition in scientific circles. On a particularly clear night, Ilara sat on her observation deck, Xyler's modified scanner resting beside her. The device had proven invaluable, helping her track wildlife migrations and health patterns with unprecedented accuracy. She often wondered if the Ctharian family had made it safely home, if they remembered their time on Earth, if Xyler had continued his journey of discovery. A soft beeping from the scanner interrupted her thoughts. At first, she assumed it was a routine wildlife alert, perhaps Rusty's pack on the move, or Athena returning to her nest. But the signal pattern was different, unfamiliar. Curious, she activated the display. A message appeared, written in slightly awkward English. Coordinates received. Permission to visit requested. Kaelin, Lyra, and Xyler of Cthar. Ilara's heart leaped. They had returned, not as castaways this time, but by choice. With trembling fingers, she typed a response. Permission granted. Welcome back, friends. 2 days later, a sleek vessel, much smaller than their previous ship, descended silently into the clearing near her station. The design was elegant, clearly built for planetary exploration rather than emergency landings. As the entry portal opened, 3 familiar figures emerged. Kaelin and Lyra were immediately recognizable, though their protective suits were vastly improved. Thinner, more flexible, clearly designed specifically for Earth conditions. But it was Xyler who drew Ilara's attention. He had grown considerably, now approaching the equivalent of human adolescence. His movements in Earth's gravity were confident, practiced, nothing like the struggling, awkward steps of their first visit. Ilara, Xyler called out, his translator device rendering his Ctharian speech into perfect English. We have returned, as promised. Emotional reunions were not common in Ctharian culture, but the family had clearly adopted some human customs. They approached with open gestures, their skin pulsing with patterns that Ilara now recognized as joy and excitement. Your message reached us 6 months ago, Kaelin explained as they settled in Ilara's living quarters. The Research Council was skeptical of our reports at first. Our experiences contradicted much of the established knowledge about predator worlds and primitive ecosystems. But we had data, Lyra added, her skin flickering with what Ilara now recognized as quiet amusement. Detailed observations, biological samples, atmospheric analyses, all supporting our new understanding of Earth's complex balance. And I wouldn't stop talking about it, Xyler admitted with a pattern that approximated a human smile. I've been studying interspecies communication since our return. Our council finally authorized this expedition, the first official cultural exchange rather than just scientific observation. Over the following weeks, the Ctharians integrated seamlessly into Ilara's research efforts. Kaelin brought advanced geological scanning techniques that revealed underwater aquifers crucial for conservation planning. Lyra's expertise in marine biology found unexpected applications in Ilara's efforts to restore seasonal waterways affected by climate change. And Xyler had become something entirely new. Neither fully Ctharian in his approach, nor human, but a bridge between worlds. He moved comfortably between analytical science and experiential knowledge, between digital data and instinctive understanding. The most remarkable moment came when Rusty's pack ventured near the station one evening. Rather than retreating inside as his parents did, Xyler asked Ilara's permission to accompany her outside. Using the techniques she had taught him years before, he approached the dingo pack with perfect respect and awareness. Rusty, older now but still the pack's leader, watched the young Ctharian with clear recognition. He remembers you, Ilara said softly as they observed from a safe distance. Not as prey, Xyler noted with satisfaction, as another being with a place in this world. Before the Ctharians departed after their month-long visit, they presented Ilara with a remarkable gift, access to a communications satellite that would allow regular contact between worlds. No longer would years pass without knowledge of each other's lives and work. This is just the beginning, Kaelin told her as they prepared to leave. We're proposing a permanent research exchange. Ctharian scientists coming to study Earth's ecosystems, human specialists visiting Cthar to experience our ocean world. With appropriate environmental protocols, of course, Lyra added, ever the cautious biologist. Xyler's farewell was the most poignant. The young Ctherian, now dedicated to becoming an interspecies communication specialist, presented Alara with a personal recording device. For your stories, he explained, the young ones on Cthar should hear about the human who showed a predator doesn't have to be an enemy, and an alien doesn't have to be a threat. As their ship rose into the cloudless Australian sky, Alara wasn't sad. This wasn't an ending, but a continuation, another chapter in a conversation between worlds that had only just begun. She turned back toward her station, where Xyler's original scanner still sat on her desk, now joined by new Ctherian technology, physical embodiments of the bridge they had built together. In the distance, Athena soared on thermal currents, her wingspan magnificent against the setting sun. Near the ridge, the silhouette of Rusty and his pack moved across the landscape, perfectly at home in their world. And above, invisible now, but present in her heart, a family of aliens who had become something more, not just visitors or researchers, but true friends who had learned, as she had, that understanding across differences was not just possible, but essential. The predator, the alien, and the human, each with their place in a universe far more connected than any of them had once imagined.